Hi cellists, this is Deborah Pae from EMU Cello and the Formosa Quartet. It's a pleasure to be back for the fourth and final video in this Michigan All-State High School Audition mini-series. I'm going to be walking you through the Mendelssohn Symphony No. 4 Allegro Vivace orchestra excerpt. This is, I would say, a very, very different piece of music than the Shostakovich Fifth Symphony excerpt that we went over the other day. Mendelssohn is all about lightness, clarity, agility, energy, and effervescence. And as a player, you're going to have to employ different left and right hand techniques. Now, instead of me playing the excerpt from beginning to end, which I think can be helpful to a certain extent, I want to instead focus on a couple of specific passages and talk about how you can choose certain fingerings to make the passage easier to play, how to organize your left hand, how to practice the stroke, and to get real clarity. And this is something that you can do, and what I would recommend, in a slower tempo and build it up incrementally. I also want to remind you that you have a wealth, a plethora of recordings and performances, video and audio out there. So please listen to a number of orchestras perform this piece. Let's go from the very beginning. Now, this opening passage is, I would say, difficult to start. A couple of things. You want to make sure that your internal pulse is very, very steady. Generally, the tendency is to rush and to tilt forward. I've not really heard a cellist play this too slowly. So even in your practice, have the metronome beat on. That's a little bit under tempo from what they're asking, which is 132 to 138. But I think starting at a more reasonable, moderate tempo is a great way to break it down. Now, my recommendation for this opening is to actually simplify it as much as possible. So I'm going to demonstrate, instead of playing exactly what's written on the page, I'm going to play every note on each dotted quarter beat, just the main notes. And the reason why I'm going to do this is so that I can make sure that my internal pulse is very, very steady. I want to make sure I'm not coming in early. Okay, so you can tell that I'm just outlining the main beats of the phrase. Now, I want to make sure that every one of those beats is really in place. Right now I'm recording on a device that also has my metronome, so I won't be able to do both. But I'm relying on a very, very steady and strong internal pulse. I'm also paying attention to the length of my notes. Am I playing them evenly? Am I playing the downbeats of each bar longer than the second half of the bar? Just paying attention to what are your tendencies. Now I'm gonna add the notes, all of the notes, but I'm not going to play the grace note. This is so I can just make sure I'm making the string crossings very, very clean, and I'm landing, again, in a very steady and subdivided fashion. Okay, so once you do that a couple of times, just making sure that those the second half of the bars with the triplet eighth notes, make sure that they don't spill forward into the next downbeat. So, right? I'm also choosing the fingering 2, 1, 2, 1, as opposed to 2, 1, 2, 2. The reason why is sometimes the double 2 makes the left hand a little bit clumsy, and I want to avoid that. So I'm going to actually substitute the E, which is just right across the street from the B, but with my first finger. Now, final step, you want to add the grace note. Now the grace note has to sound really clean and effervescent. So again, it's about left hand agility. We're gonna make sure we're not squeezing in any particular place in our left hand. That was not very clear, so I gotta get there a little sooner, and I have to pronounce the C a little bit more clearly and have my bow on the string more in advance. Okay, so even as a professional cellist, this is tricky. I have to be very mindful of a lot of different details. So this is why I recommend when you learn a new piece of music, kind of take a look at the PDF or the score and just ask yourself, how can I simplify it? How can I sort of strip it down to its bare bones and add the other details so that each stage you feel comfortable and you feel like, okay, I really have mastered that level. I want to just address the fingering that's written in the part on the third line. I always tell my students that when they get a new piece of music, and oftentimes editors or perhaps the person who had the library part before them might have written a fingering in. I always encourage my students to try it and to see, what did that person have in mind? Get a sense of why the fingering is printed in the part. Now, I also encourage my students to go a second further step, and that is to identify whether that fingering works well for your left hand. For me, this fingering 1-4, 1-3, 1-3-1. Okay, slowly it works just fine. But if I play it up to tempo, I notice that the time in which I have to shift from the D sharp to the E on the D string, it's a very far distance in such a short amount of time. So again, I can already feel my bicep tightening up, and it's a really uncomfortable fingering for me. Now, they don't indicate, whoever put this fingering in, they didn't indicate whether it's on the D string or on the G string. If they thought this was supposed to be up the string, that's also another possibility, but it doesn't feel any more comfortable. For me, I'm actually going to suggest a different fingering that I feel fits better in my left hand. And my sort of golden rule of thumb is if I can fit more fingers under one hand position with minimal moving, that's probably a safer bet, especially at a quicker tempo. So backing up 2 bars, I'm going to do this fingering instead. I'm going to shift to the F sharp and then stay in position, in open extended position, then shift up. Let me do that again. Okay, so by only shifting once up from the E to the F sharp 2 bars before the third line, I am now able to fit like 8 more notes in that one position. Also, when I finish this 4, D sharp, and then I will shift to the 1, but now my first finger is much closer to that E as opposed to the third finger. Now the distance is a lot further for that shift. Let's jump to the 4th line. I'm going to just start right on the downbeat. Here, I'm going to shift to the A sharp, and the reason why is so that I have all 3 notes under one hand position. Additionally, the next passage or the next bar, I can play those 4 notes in that same position because I'm employing the open D string. So with that one shift, I I've got all those notes. Now I'm going to shift to the E. All in first position. Now, I am actually going to choose to shift to the 1 on the C sharp. Now the reason why is I can do 4 open 1, but I find that doing 1 1 is a little bit awkward and uncomfortable. You could do this. So that's one option. For me, I'd like to, even though it's a shorter distance, I might want to avoid the 1 1. So just personally, I'm going to do this for fingering. Okay. And the reason why is because then I don't have to cross strings in the middle of a group of 3, and all of the notes are in groups, in hand positions. So it's just a personal preference. The other fingering works just as well. The second bar of the 5th line, I'm going to shift to the B on my 4th finger. So now the reason why I do that is so then I can fit all these notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, all those 4 notes in one hand position. Then I'm going to shift up. Then another hand position, right? G sharp, A sharp, B. All those notes are in one. I don't have to stretch. They're right there. So now you have a choice at this juncture. You can shift to a 1. You'll be in open position, right? Open extension for the next 6 notes. Or you could do and shift to a 2, 2, 4, 1, and then shift up to the A. Now, it just really depends on the size of your hand, whether you feel flexible enough to do that. There's no perfect fingering, but I think you need to go for what feels really great. This forte, the G sharp, I shift from the G sharp to the B. I'm going to be in open position because I know I need to set myself up for the B, E, G sharp. Now I know I want to be in that open position because the next bar is in the same open position. Now you can stay in open position 1, 4, 1, 4, right? So that's actually a really nice organized way to do it. I think I might actually do shift to the 4th finger, so I give my hand a chance to close up and feel a little looser. But again, it's to your preference. Let's jump to the fortissimo in the 7th line. So right here. When you listen, or if you've ever played the symphony, or if you listen to recordings, the violins, or sort of the upper strings, have the melody, along with the brass. Yum, ya da da dum, bum, pee, ya ba ba bum. So as the bass in the orchestra, you're a support figure in this motive. And I think it's really important that in addition to being very steady, that you also phrase with the melody in your ear. The violins and the brass don't play yum, ba 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 bum, bum, bee, ya da da dee. They play yum, ba 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 bum, bum, bee, ya ba ba bum, right? A 4-bar unit. So I'm going to do the same shape. Right? So by phrasing, even in sort of a rhythmic motive like this, it really shows the panel that you understand kind of where your line fits in the scope of the orchestra part. Final sort of phrase or thing that I want to focus on here is the last part with the hooked bowing. Now it's really important with the eighth notes that are in the pickup to the next bar that you really grab the string. So right, so you want to be very explicit, very articulate in the bow hand. Make sure that it's almost like your index finger, your 1, 2, and thumb sort of trio here kind of grabs the string. You want to make sure that it's very, very articulate. I'm going to stop the bow just a millisecond before that eighth note gets re-articulated. And then I sort of stop the bow. Okay, so make sure that also that these dotted quarters, again, we want the full value. We don't want them to rush and to get cut short, therefore spilling forward. The last thing that I want to mention is that in the bow arm, even though you're playing all of these short or small note values, you want to make sure that your bicep and your arm is really resting on the string. I always tell my students that you want the bow hold to feel firm enough, right? Firm enough so you don't drop the bow, firm but loose at the same time. So you can see that I'm able to wiggle my fingers back and forth. And to make sure that this thumb muscle here is feeling nice and soft as well. Having that flexibility so that you can pull the bow which will then allow the smaller muscles in your bow arm and your bow hand to rebound with more ease. Cellists, it's been a real pleasure to make these videos for you, to hear from some of you. I'm really looking forward to meeting some of you in the coming months. For those of you that are getting ready for college auditions, I hope EMU Cello is on your list. If you'd like to reach out to me, please don't hesitate. I'm always happy to start conversations, to geek out over the cello, talk about musical ideas, and of course, you know, cello technique and approach. I wish you a safe and healthy week, and also really the best of luck in these Michigan All-State auditions. I hope that you feel more equipped and more confident when you walk into that audition room, and just really do your best. I look forward to seeing all of you, hopefully very, very soon. Stay safe.